My talk is about writing globally for locals. And what I mean by that is that you need to write as if you're writing for translation, even if you're not now. And a lot of you are aware of how to write for translation. If you're tech writers, you know about some of the things you need to do. And I just want to talk a little bit about a situation that...
That's okay. Can I maximize it?
How do we do that? Okay, thanks. Sorry, technical person. How do you do that when you maybe have a specific situation that is not necessarily docs, it's not necessarily UI text that I ran into? So we have a very wide population here in the United States that is very diverse, unlike some countries, but more and more as people migrate and go to other countries, it's like that all over. So you can talk to your colleagues, you can talk to your friends who may be of different backgrounds, and you should write towards them. English is not necessarily their first language for some of your colleagues, and use them for how you write, okay? So let's see. As I said, you should write as if you're translating now. So the situation I ran into is I needed to create a sample data set that would ship with my product. And I needed that to be internationalized, okay? Needed to look like it was representing people from all over. So I got a sample data set from our QA team, which is great, except it only had about 50 records, and I needed about 500. So I needed to kind of duplicate those records, copy and paste, into a spreadsheet. That's how I started off to get my CSV file. And it had things in it like name, address, phone number, social security number, date of birth, gender, that kind of thing. And I needed it to represent a bunch of different people. And this was, again, it was a data set that was written actually by Canadians that had Canadian and US addresses in it. And that didn't, when I looked at it, it didn't really represent what I needed to do. I had to get something that was usable and looked like an international group. So I couldn't use real names of people. A lot of times your internal people will use real names of people like baseball players, football players, things like that. They'll use names of characters from books, movies, comic books, Disney characters. And so you can't use those, they're trademarked. You have to use real looking names, okay? You can't use all white Anglo-Saxon Protestant names. That doesn't work for everybody. I am white goodness. Too much beer earlier. White Anglo-Saxon Protestant mostly, but not all. I have a lot of different backgrounds within me, and so I actually used some of that to help me write this. You can't use just North American regions. Some of the regions' names were things like Midwest. Well, someone in India or China or Europe is not going to understand what that means unless they know the US. So that had to go. Those sorts of things had to go. You can't use real-looking phone numbers or social security numbers. So you have to fake that too. So what did I do? Well, I picked common names from Latin America, Europe, and Asia. I could cover Latin America because I actually have some Cuban background in me, and I lived in Panama for 3 years, so I know enough Hispanic names to get by. Plenty of European background. I've got Dutch, I've got French, I've got German, I've got English, I've got Irish, Portuguese. I can cover those areas. Where I ran into trouble is I don't have any Asian in me. So I have a few Asian friends. My brother-in-law's last name is Kumar. That worked because it was short. You want short names. You want something that's easy to spell if people have to type this stuff in if they're practicing with the data set. And I went on and I searched baby names. Popular baby names for boys, girls, and last names of different countries. That's how I filled in what I needed. Or I asked my colleagues, looked at people I happen to know from previous years, what would be good names to use. And that was how I built my data set. So I just kind of mixed the names up. So for example, I used to know a guy named Jose Salinas. I used his first name and his last name, but not together, in different parts. And Salinas is kind of a popular Hispanic last name, so is Hernandez, Fernandez, Garcia, a couple other names. And that was easy. So you need to do that. To fake the social security numbers and phone numbers, I used very obviously fake names, or numbers, excuse me. Things like 111, 222, 33333. Social security numbers that went up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. It works pretty well. So it made it obvious to whoever would look at the data set, and every record went sequentially up a number. So it was obvious it wasn't a real number of either a phone number or a social security number. And then, of course, I changed things to be more international. People don't use last names, they use the word surname. They don't use zip codes, they use the word postal code. Instead of a social security number, we used ID numbers. Okay, that was, there we go. And that's my talk. So that's how I took, something that I needed to, interesting. I'm going to let Tom figure out the next person. That's how I took something that needed to be internationalized and made real people's names. I used real street names, real zip codes, but then I faked everything else. Yeah?
Did you open source it, maybe?
Actually, I didn't. Sorry, it was for the company I worked for previously, and we used it as part of our product. But that, if you need to, that's kind of a couple of tips on how to do that. Google worked great for Googling babies' last names. It was first names. It was great. That's it. Thanks. So we have up next, I'm going to let you start talking.